Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen, and we're going to talk about what this incredibly important book, this D&D canon hardback, and those are the events, right? Like, I feel like Dungeons and Dragons is, every 3 months a new D&D canon hardback drops like a comet, and the world ignites, right? The D&D celebrants celebrate. And those who stand against D&D stand off the sidelines, don't read the book, but have lots of opinions about the book and talk nonstop and complain nonstop and do, coverage on something they didn't buy that they don't really know anything about. And it's frustrating to see how much coverage these D&D canon hardbacks get from people who literally haven't bought a D&D 5e book ever or in like 5 years. It's astounding, right? So, but what I think is real, I am shocked how good the Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen is. And today I want to talk about one aspect of Dragonlance, the setting that is highlighted in Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, that was pointed out from another channel that I'm going to call out right now. It's called the Character Sheet on comicbook.com. And it's fairly new channel, but they are crushing it. They did a ton of incredible Dungeons & Dragons coverage this year with really good editing. Right, like their stuff is really fun to watch. There's a little bit of humor in it, and it's extremely well edited. It looks very professional, unlike this channel. I just don't edit, right? And the reason why is I'm just like everybody else. I could grow that skill set, but it just takes so much time. And also, I think if you're serious about editing, once you go into, and this is just my 2 cents on D&D commentators who edit their videos. One of two things happens: you go pro or you do less. And I've been seeing a whole bunch of 2022 D&D commentator end of year saying, "Hey, I'm going to be doing less videos next year," or they're ramping it up and they're going pro. Right? There's a few more and more. There are channels that are going pro. Right? So, and I think this character sheet on comicbook.com, I think that these guys used to do coverage for Critical Role. And now they're just expanding out to cover everything. And I think they just had a freestanding channel that got swept under the comicbook.com umbrella, which, again, this is really smart. Creatives connecting with counters, bean counters, right, who can really make a channel shine, right? And then winning with other commentators like me talking about their commentating, right? So I'm really fascinated with it. I really think this is a new 2022 understanding. Nothing moves on D&D without the creatives, the counters, and the commentators. That's the real fuel of Dungeons & Dragons. So the guys on Character Sheet, the Character Sheet on comicbook.com, very recently, if you go to their channel and just hit the videos, you can see this right in the section. And what they did was they did an amazing job of really quite impressive. Was they did a tier list on all the existing settings, right? And when they hit Dragonlance, one of them said, "Hey, did you know that Dragonlance?" That they said this about Forgotten Realms, and I didn't know this, right? They said Forgotten Realms was literally brought forward because Dungeons and Dragons was so worried about the explosive popularity of Dragonlance that they thought that what would happen was that Dungeons and Dragons popularity would be swamped by the popularity of the Dragonlance novels, and that the Dungeons and Dragons Dragonlance books would become footnotes to this incredibly popular fantasy series that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman were working on, right? Or were continuing to publish novels on, right? And I did not know that. I did not know that Forgotten Realms was literally just and this is so fascinating to me, right? Because one of the issues, Dungeons and Dragons is this. It's so cute that anybody thinks it's a game, right? Like, it was invented in Gary Gygax dropped it on the world in 1974, right? And since then, there have been so many things that have come to take it, right? Like that have threatened its very existence or threatened to put it in, nobody puts baby in the corner, or like, So basically, to put it in a corner, right? And Dragonlance is one of these. Matthew Mercer what was and is one of these, right? Like, Matthew Mercer has had a fantastic relationship with Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons has made Matthew Mercer millions. Well deserved. He's worked very hard for it. And Matthew Mercer has paid back those millions in tenfold in popularity, critters, followers, players, dungeon masters to Dungeons & Dragons. That's been an incredibly symbiotic relationship, right? But what's really fascinating is Matthew Mercer. There are people, because Matthew Mercer's had success, there are people today who are like, Matthew, please abandon Dungeons & Dragons and spin up your own tabletop role-playing game, and you'll win. You'll beat out Dungeons & Dragons. Let's all forget the fact that Dungeons & Dragons has 48 years of history that you don't have, has overcome many obstacles, has fans in every single age bracket, and honestly, I feel bad for Matthew Mercer, because I feel like, he's Hollywood, right? Boy, do Hollywood like to hear people shine their name, and so I'm worried that he might try. I'm not worried that his game will never out, if Matthew Mercer wrote his own tabletop role-playing game, there's absolutely no way that it's that'll compete with Dungeons & Dragons. It'll get crushed. But I would feel bad for Matthew Mercer, because he burned that bridge to D&D, and that bridge could really serve him well, right? Like, 10 years from now, he may be the design lead on Dungeons & Dragons, right? And I think there's a ton, he's made millions from Dungeons & Dragons, and honestly, I think he could make 100 million. I think he could make a $250 million from Dungeons & Dragons, because he's so well positioned, right? And that relationship is symbiotic. So I had no idea that this was the case, that Forgotten Realms was literally a setting that was spun up by Dungeons & Dragons so that they could start taking, putting less focus on Dragonlance, right? And making sure that they had their own functioning setting, right? In case Dragonlance became an out of control threat to Dungeons & Dragons by popularity, right? And to be clear, right? One thing that is really fascinating is the Dragonlance books. I know this for a fact. Actually, I think Ben Riggs' book, Slaying the Dragon, I think the dragon he's talking about is Lorraine Williams. I think that whole book is a hit piece on Lorraine Williams. That's my humble opinion on it. Is essentially, but one of the things he said was that the Dragonlance novels outsold every single source book Dungeons & Dragons ever created, right? So the reality is, it did manifest into this hugely popular fiction series, right? And many people really didn't know or didn't care that it was connected to Dungeons & Dragons. But the reality is, Dungeons & Dragons outlasted and outperformed Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen in the end. Because there was a period where people were like, you got 190 novels. None of these stories are getting wrapped up. And people just kind of got disinterested, because they were like, you're just letting the money faucet run. In my humble opinion, the reason why Dragonlance, the novels, lost out to Dungeons & Dragons was they were just another, set of fantasy novels, right? Whereas Dungeons & Dragons is truly something unique. There's nothing like it in the world. And it's the progenitor, right? Dungeons & Dragons is the creator tabletop role-playing game, whereas, as Dragonlance is just another fantasy series. And they turned on the money faucet, and they never turned it off, right? And that's dangerous. That's dangerous. When people get the idea that, like, oh, you're just kind of plopping out another book on the end of this line, they get tired of it. And that's exactly what happened. And they've had to restore the line lately, and I'm not sure it's even restored. I don't know if anybody... I have not heard gangbusters reviews of any of the new Dragonlance novels. I haven't even met a single person or seen one ever that's been read, right? So that's my take. So I was really shocked. I did not know that about Forgotten Realms and its relationship with Dragonlance, and how, again, and Lorraine Williams had to do that. She had to make sure that Forgotten Realms grew, and that there was a safe environment for stories to be told within Dungeons & Dragons that could be swept away by a novel series. That's fascinating. So thank you, Character Sheet from comicbook.com. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Every word of that is my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear your humble opinion. Let me know in the comments below. And let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.